The Dragon Age franchise has a women-loving women problem. That problem being history of their depiction of sapphic relationships as toxic, abusive, and deadly. And I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it if it was a once or twice kind of thing, but this is a pattern. In the Dragon Age Origins quest, A Paragon of Her Kind, we meet Espeth, who shares that she and Branka were in a relationship. World of Datus Volume 2 reveals that their affair began not long after Branka's arranged marriage to Oghren, and probably played a role in her leaving him behind on the expedition to find the Anvil of the Void, while taking the rest of the house, including Espeth, with her. But by the time we meet Espeth in-game, things have gone horribly wrong between her and Branka. Branka became so obsessed with finding the Anvil of the Void that she purposely let female members of her crew be captured by Darkspawn to become broodmothers and breed more Darkspawn, as fodder for the traps along the way to the Anvil of the Void. She even let Espeth herself become corrupted and start to turn, something that Espeth kills herself over before letting happen. This is inferred in-game and confirmed in the game file notes. Branka herself is also either killed by the player in an ensuing fight, or potentially commits suicide as well, unable to live with what she's done if the player pressures her about it. Also in Dragon Age Origins, once you gain enough approval with her, Liliana speaks of her past as a bard, including her teacher and lover, Marjolaine, and how Marjolaine ultimately betrayed her. The DLC Liliana's Song goes into greater detail of Liliana's past. Marjolaine tricked Liliana into thinking they would return stolen treasonous documents, but instead stabbed Liliana and left her at the mercy of the guards, pinning the whole thing on her. Liliana spent time in prison, where she was tortured and would have been killed, but saved by Mother Dorothea, later known as Divine Destinia, who helped her escape. But even before this horrible betrayal, Liliana and Marjolaine's relationship is depicted as toxic, by virtue of their power imbalance. Marjolaine calls Liliana a pretty thing, orders her never to question anything, and treats her like she's an object. Marjolaine tells Liliana what to do and when to do it, and the very first time Liliana objects to this, Marjolaine betrays her. Marjolaine is potentially killed by the player if she is encountered. Briala grew up serving as Selene's personal handmaid since she was a young child. Briala's mother instructed her to obey Selene in everything, even despite Selene saying things like comparing Briala's dark brown curls to horse dung. As such, their power imbalance runs very deep, to the point where at the beginning of the novel Dragon Age: The Masked Empire, Briala has very little self-worth and thinks only of how she can be of use to Selene. And Selene hardly sees Briala any differently. For example, when she upsets Briala and Briala has the gall to walk away without pouring Selene's tea, all Selene thinks about is how she'll have to do it herself, without showing any care for insulting the person she supposedly loves. When Briala begs Selene to let her quietly assassinate a human who is responsible for hanging up cut-up pieces of a murdered elf in Alam Sharal, to try and appease the elves who are rightly uprising against this horrible act, Selene initially agrees. But then she changes her mind and arranges Briala to get caught and captured, while Selene herself travels there to oversee the burning down of Alam Sharal's elven quarter and massacre of a few thousand elves. This is horrible enough on its own, but then Selene goes on to make Briala feel like it was her fault for not being there to convince Selene not to do it. Selene actually manages to get Briala back on her side over the course of the novel, convincing Briala that she will free the elves if they work together to get control of the Alluvians. Briala almost believes this, up until she pieces together the final nail in the coffin of their relationship. Selene arranged the murder of all her servants, including Briala's parents. Why? So that there would be no potential witnesses left to speak of her arrangements in the game to become Empress. Briala realizes there is nothing more important to Selene than her public image and her power, so she takes the Alluvians for herself, declaring she will use them to empower the elves of Orlais, but not before Selene tries to kill her, further proving Briala's revelation. In Dragon Age Inquisition, Selene is potentially assassinated and Briala is potentially executed, depending on the player's choices. In the Dragon Age Inquisition quest Strange Bedfellows, the player is tasked with finding a missing scout named Ritz. When the player finds her, it's discovered that Ritz was spending intimate time with another woman, an apostate named Eldreda. This discovery, though, is posthumously, as the player finds them in the middle of a battle with Templars after Eldreda has already been killed. There is nothing here suggesting that Ritz and Eldreda were toxic in any way, but I wanted to include them on this list because of another killing of Sapphic woman, something all too common. In the Netflix show Dragon Age Absolution, Miriam is an escaped slave from Tevinter and Ira is a runaway noble of the same nation. In the first episode, it is established that the two have a romantic history, but Ira left Miriam to join the Inquisition. She comes back to recruit Miriam on a job to steal a powerful Tevinter artifact. The last episode reveals that Ira's actual plan was to sell Miriam back into slavery in exchange for the artifact that she planned on giving to the Crimson Knight, who she secretly works for. Ira chose to use Miriam like an object to barter with. Despite this, Miriam actually offers Zero one last chance to try and repair the relationship, and Ira refuses, stealing the artifact and fleeing. One or two examples of this wouldn't be much to talk about because I'm not claiming that WLW are above toxicity. Unfortunately, abusive relationships do not distinguish gender. What makes it worth talking about is how repetitive it is. The pattern actually outweighs the number of healthy and living sapphic relationships in the Dragon Age franchise, excluding those that are player-controlled. And that creates a negative message on what BioWare is presenting as a norm. What we need are more examples of positive sapphic relationships. Tessa and Charter from Dragon Age Mage Killer comics are a nice example, as are Vadis and Arian from Dragon Age Tevinter Knight's story Up Front. I would love to read more stories with them, or more stories with other WLW in it. Datus as a fictional world is an open space to explore fantasy sapphism in a variety of ways. I hope BioWare learns to take better advantage of that.